Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K Episode 4, Brothers Lost, made by a fan with too much time. If you want to check out my previous reactions, remember the playlist card will be at the top. Just click on it and you'll be able to access it. If you want to check out the original video as well as a fan with too much time's YouTube channel, remember the links are in the description below. Yes, last week was episode 3, Good Soldier. Captain Kraken, a clone trooper, I think it was a clone trooper, led the ship, a brand new ship called the Belajor, and the High Chancellor ordered him to use his brand new vessel to ram right through the unidentified vessel that just, came into system, and that was the Atlas of Steel, a Warhammer 40K universe ship. It was just a cargo ship, it wasn't a battleship, I've been told in the comment sections, and we don't know the condition of the Atlas of Steel. We know for a fact that the Belajor activated its hyperdrive and it went right through the ship. We don't know whether the ship is destroyed or is just heavily damaged. I guess we're going to find that out in this episode that's coming. And we don't know when the Warhammer 40K universe battle fleet Zek-Tech will arrive at the system where the Atlas of Steel was, exiting out of the warp. We also don't know what is there going to be their response in this situation, because the High Chancellor decided to, make the first strike, draw the first blood, essentially. And I think he has declared war against this unknown threat. And we know for a fact that the Warhammer universe is not going to take this lying down. They will retaliate with extreme prejudice and they will destroy everything. I don't see the Star Wars universe side of things surviving this opening exchange. I don't see them surviving it. They have to retreat. They have to retreat as soon as possible. Yeah. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go. These clips he's showing, they're from the Warhammer Plus content, right? Angels of Blood. Blood Angels. Was it Angels of Blood or Blood Angels? I can't remember. and I watched it. Yes, it was the No, the Death Angels. Angels of Death. Angels of Death. Sorry.
No forgiveness, no retreat.
What? I heard no retreat, but what was the first part of the sentence? Okay.
Renfai was yelling as though his voice could reach the clone captain. Dr. Sheena felt a strange pang echo within her as she watched, her eyes fixed to the sensor readings as Captain Kraken's Venator briefly paused and oriented itself in an all-too-familiar way. She saw the sensors register a sudden spike in power levels, and then, as another reading streaked across the screen, her eyes snapped up in open disbelief. Chrono radiation. "Captain!" the Jedi called one last time, panic riddling his voice like maggots in rotten meat. It was over.
What? Oh gosh.
In an instant. A terrible, shining instant. Ren-Fi's wide jaws gaped suddenly as he gave voice to an inhuman scream, a reptilian sound of teeth and tongue and throaty horror which reverberated in the air. Dr. Sheena felt it as well, felt the cold, sickly panic rising within her, the realization that something terrible and permanent had just transpired before her own eyes.
Jedi Master Ren-Fi, he's exhibiting a lot of emotions right now. I mean, Jedi are not supposed to do that, really. You know, they're supposed to be very calm and stoic, in a sense, you know. Even though something terrible like this has occurred, you know, you wouldn't expect a Jedi to be screaming and shouting. This is different. He must really be stressed, you know, especially considering what happened in last week's episode, episode 3. He must really be stressed. Maybe that's why he is out of character, I would say, for a Jedi, you know. Yeah.
The knight collapsed, overwhelmed, his claws grasping his broad head as if to hold it together as bloodshot streaks painted the yellows around his corneas, and thick veins of drool ran between his peg-like teeth in uncontrolled rivulets. And yet, Dr. Sheena empathized with the Trandoshan then, more than at any other time. A hyperspace ram. Illegal under Republic law, illegal under Separatist law. Even the Hutts forbade such unthinkable use of hyperdrive technology. Even the old Sith knew enough about the danger of that kind of trend to avoid it whenever possible. And Captain Kraken had just...
Interesting. In the movies, that's not the case. In the movies, they use this maneuver, you know. Of course, they only used it once so far. We don't know about the future movies of Star Wars, whether they're going to try something like this again. But I'm asking myself, why? Why is it forbidden to do something like this? I mean, you can create missiles that have hyperdrive systems, and, you know, you can basically do the same thing. Let the missile carry that momentum and go right through the enemy ships. No matter if they have shields or not, the ship that the missile's going through would just be eviscerated. So yeah, I see the advantages of using something like this. Yes, you could consider it somewhat of a weapon of mass destruction as well. I don't know what kind of damage will it do to hyperspace. Really, I just don't know. But I think it's a good maneuver. Yeah. I blame the movies. You know, they gave us this example. You know, before that new Star Wars movie, we didn't even think about this. Or should I say, I didn't think about this. Using hyperspace as a weapon like that. You know, carry the momentum being carried by the ship as it goes into hyperspace. I never thought about that, really, until that time when I saw the Raddus going right through the supremacy.
Broken a million laws across the breadth of known space to kill the flagship of a potential enemy. A potential enemy. Dr. Sheena liked to think of herself as heavily pragmatic. She was fast to know what should be done, even in the face of petty moral considerations and cultural aesthetics. Logic was ruthless, and she liked to think of herself as an acolyte of logic. But this was madness on a level she could never have expected and would never have recommended. The outsider ship had been hundreds of times more massive than the Venator that had been smashed into it, but clearly it had not been shielded, nor even as armored as a ship of that size should have been. The entire front end of the massive vessel was blown open and curling away like a junker artist's rendition of a flower made from a steel can. Blue and white scars of superheated metal glowed like filigree across every scar, every rent and tear. "Rescue," Renfai muttered, still on the floor. "Sir?" asked one of the clones, the captain of the ship. "Rescue!" Renfai yelled, rising to his feet unnaturally, deck plates bending from the force of whatever energy field he had used to lift himself. "All Venators, all KDY vessels, move in towards the outsider ship. Commence emergency rescue operations. Save as many as you can." "Yes, General," called the captain of the ship, and the clones manning the communication systems got to work relaying his orders. Dr. Sheena said nothing. After all, what could she say? She couldn't even pull her eyes away from the cloud of metallic debris forming around the carcass of the vessel. Distantly, she was impressed by the ruggedness of the vessel's engines, still burning, turning the ship in a sputtering, slow spiral, despite its structure having been disemboweled. She didn't want to think about it. Wanted to look away, away from the glowing metal, away from the encroaching Venators surrounding the ship, away from the cloud of debris. But too much of that debris was squirming. Too much of it was shaped like... Finally, her eyes broke from the scene as she threw up onto the floor.
Like people? Must have been, because, this ship was carrying a lot of people. It was a cargo ship as well. Oof.
It wasn't much. Her breakfast had been light, and so she had recovered when the sensors operator next to her called out his next observation. "More anomalies, sir!" "How many? How far?" Renfai almost groaned. "Near our edge of the system, General. Current readings showed 20. One moment, sir." The sensor operator began checking his equipment, and Dr.
This is escalating pretty fast. Oh gosh.
Dr. Sheena, still standing nearby, couldn't help but turn back to look at his console screen. Her eyes bulged. "Withdraw the fleet!" she gasped. "More are still appearing. Transmission is being detected. Being sent out from the downed dreadnought." "Intercept that transmission. Continue the rescue operation." "Yes, General." "Are you listening to me?" Dr. Sheena shouted. "I heard you, Doctor," Renfai said. "And?" she insisted. "And I believe the outsiders will see that we are trying to rescue their people and will not open fire on us in the midst of that." That's not a given! They could just as easily blame us for its current... Transmission intercepted, sir.
Look, I understand what he's saying, right? But then they're gonna be asking questions like, why is the ship destroyed? Who went into hyperspace and ripped it apart like that? Who is it? So how are you gonna explain that part, Jedi Master Renfai? I like what you're trying to do here. I really do, but I'm afraid it's just not going to work out. I'm with Dr. Sheena here. You have to get out as soon as possible.
"Play it," Renfai ordered. The clone obeyed, playing the message over the speakers. It was a man, or at least it sounded like one. He, or it, was almost shouting, his voice rich with panic and zeal of a kind that sent shivers down Dr. Sheena's spine. The language was alien, guttural, and yet not nearly as alien as the Doctor would have thought from an extragalactic species. "Get the protocol droid working on deciphering that," Renfai ordered. "Yes, sir." "Update me on the anomalies," the Jedi said. "Right. Sir, you're not going to believe this." "Speak, trooper." "I'm counting well over 200 vessels, General." "Then we still outnumber them."
That's not the point. That's not the point. That's not the point at all. But anyways, we continue.
The KDY fleet is massive. Well over 1,000 ships to discourage an attack. Sir, the smallest vessel in their fleet is 2 kilometers long. The largest I'm seeing is 12, maybe 13 kilometers long. And it's not just 1 or 2. I'm detecting 6, no, more of such vessels. General, they are accelerating.
Open hailing frequencies. Try to contact them.
The clone nodded, strapping on a thick communications headset as he began to scan frequencies for active use. Stop this! Look at that fleet! We can't fight off that many dreadnoughts! We have none of our own! Everything in that outsider armada dwarfs us, but
Doctor, I can appreciate how stressful this must be for you. But this is now an active operation. If you cannot control yourself, then I encourage you to return to the laboratory.
But are you mad? Look at how large their ships are!
Strength does not come from size alone.
This is no...
Yeah, in your universe, that would work. But in their universe, the bigger the better. So, I hear what you're saying, Jedi Master Ren5, but I'm sorry. No, it's just not gonna cut it with these guys. It's not gonna cut it.
No time for your philosophical moralizing. That fleet is going to eat us alive if we aren't gone before they close with us. Stop acting like a peacemaker and start acting like a commander.
Enough! Snapper, clear. Please escort the doctor back to the laboratory. Stand guard outside and make sure the science staff stays safe.
Aye, General. Come on, miss. One coaxed as both came along either side of Dr. Sheena, clearly intending to seize her by the arms if she did not comply willingly. Dr. Sheena scowled, but would not surrender her dignity to the Jedi, turning without a word and walking towards the lift which would take her back down towards the other members of her team. But before she left, she bore witness to the following exchange, an exchange that ensured she would be dragged out of the room, screaming to all the ship that Ren5 was a fool. She bore witness to the next translated message and final actions of the gutted dreadnought. The sight and sound of it would mark her for the rest of her breaths. Sir, we've got another transmission going out from the damaged dreadnought.
Is that translation complete?
Aye, sir. TC4 on the Statesman has completed a translation matrix, applying it now. They all waited for a few seconds, all but Dr. Sheena and her escort, who moved slowly but steadily towards the doors, both the clones and the doctor being more than slightly curious in hearing what the split vessel was trying to transmit.
Take your time, Dr. Sheena, take your time. Just make tippy toes, you know. You don't have to rush. Just take your time.
They didn't have to wait long, as the frenzied voice of the ship's captain blared over the comm speakers.
I didn't hear a thing. I heard Emperor, but then everything else is just very mangled and jumbled up. I couldn't really hear it. But it seems like the ship exploded. Yeah. Oh gosh.
Everyone was stunned, shocked, horrified. The outsider dreadnought had just exploded, its hull already a glowing wreck from the unexpected and unbelievable hyperspace ramming maneuver Captain Kraken had just performed tens of minutes ago. And as destructive as that had been, this was somehow even worse. The massive, rent vessel had appeared to darken and then blossom outward with silent, radiant light. Spikes had been wearing his helmet, a habit he maintained even in his new role as captain of his own Venator-class Star Destroyer. The lenses darkened to shield him from the sudden flash, but most of his bridge crew were not so lucky. Either blinded or gawking, they watched as the explosion began to spread out, sweeping through the Venators and KDY vessels that had positioned themselves around the dreadnought. "Full reverse!" he called. No one responded. That was understandable. What they were seeing was rather shocking. But Spikes was dead to novelty and unimpressed by power. He drew his blaster pistol and fired it into the floor, the sound and heat jolting his crew back from the oblivion of disbelief. "Full reverse!" he repeated, and the
okay. He fired. He fired in the CIC. Really? Really? Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's so original, you know? That is so original. Oh, that's crazy. But aren't you breaking like a lot of regulations and rules aboard a vessel like that? Busy shooting in the CIC? I mean, you could kill someone. But anyways.
The clone crew scrambled to obey. Spikes had earned his name at the Battle of Jabim. He lost all his pod brothers in that fight, and had been separated behind enemy lines when the nationalists of the muddy hellscape had overwhelmed Shelter Base. Alone, standing atop a rapidly sinking pile composed of the burnt bodies of his brothers, he had held for 3 days. 3 days. They came at him every hour, on the hour, for 3 days. He used all his power packs, all his brothers' power packs, all their thermal detonators, all of their equipment that wasn't sucked into the planet's muddy maw. With every assault, the Separatists would lose more men, and after every assault, he survived. Eventually he was rescued by the Padawan Pack, led by Anakin Skywalker, and was named after an intercepted transmission sent by the Nationalists just prior to his retrieval.
Avoid the southern descent. Single enemy position. No strategic importance. Assault will bleed you. The position has spikes.
The term had been common military slang among the Nationalists of Jabim to refer to a heavily entrenched enemy position, one which could not be taken without heavy losses. Spikes had taken the name like a wounded soldier takes a Medal of Honor, and he had carried that experience throughout the entire war, and it had served him well many times, and this was no different. His Venator, the Trusted Victory, didn't even turn, all retro thrusters firing in full reverse, sliding the wedge-shaped ship backwards. He watched as other Venators, more of which were sliding into view of his bridge as his own vessel continued to reverse course, were slower to react. Many did nothing. A few didn't even cut their forward engines. And of those that did begin to take decisive action, most tried to spin their Venator around, wasting precious time. When the rolling wave of the scorching blue and purple energy reached them,
I remember this episode in Clone Wars. Yeah, it's a good choice. Good choice, a fan with too much time. Very good choice.
Rocked the ship like an asteroid collision, sending the Star Destroyer tumbling and turning through the void like a kite caught in a hurricane. Systems flickered, alarms sounded, gravity died, and then it passed. "Damage report," Spikes called, sitting in one of the comm officer's chairs, having strapped himself down mere moments before the impact. The replies were sluggish at first, but soon the clones snapped back to their instincts, lifting off fluctuating systems, damaged components, and resequencing protocols. The ship was battered, but far from dead, and soon gravity reasserted itself as all main systems came back online. And that was good, because there was no time to lose. "I need the current status of the enemy ships," Spikes said. "It's just over 200 ships, all closing with the fleet. They're opening fire!" Spikes unstrapped himself, jogging to the massive holo display at the center of the bridge. "Show me!" Spikes ordered. The holotable flicked to life, showing the disarrayed elements of the KDY defense fleet, already partially devoured by the explosion caused by the dreadnought. It also displayed the outsider fleet, numerically smaller than their own armada, and yet so much more. All of their ships were massive, but they had appeared at a great distance compared to their initial dreadnought, and Spikes concluded their opening salvos to be more a show of force and fervor than an effective attack. He quickly realized his error when the Courage and the Coruscanti Honor, two fellow Venators that were drifting nearby, were suddenly struck by pillars of crimson light. The beams were almost as wide as the Star Destroyers themselves, and while the shields seemed to hold for a moment, they quickly collapsed.
This is not a welcoming or warning shot. This is serious. They are training their weapons to kill you. This is the time to retreat. This is the time to retreat. Okay, guys, you're losing your fleets here. Just get out. As soon as possible. Get out.
Spikes was dead to novelty, was unimpressed by power, but even he nearly paused as he watched the two sister ships melt like candles under the crimson touch of the outsider weapons. Nearly. "Angle the ship to face the enemy fleet. Lower our profile," he called, and his crew responded with practiced efficiency. And not a moment too soon, as a similar pillar of red streaked past their starboard side, skimming the shields and scorching the plating. But it was just a scratch, a scathing hit, a small thing carrying a large lesson which Spikes took to heart. "Contact all surviving Venators in our area. Tell them to drive for the destroyed dreadnought. Tell them to use the debris and the skeleton of the ship as cover. We will lead the way." His orders were carried out, and even parroted by other canny officers of the Republic Navy.
Okay, alright, that's an interesting maneuver, going behind the debris left by the Atlas of Steel and using it as cover. That's okay, I guess. But what's your plan after that? Are you still planning on attacking these guys? Hey, okay, Captain Spikes, let's see what you've got.
And soon he and 8 other Venators were cruising full thrust for the drifting white-hot wreckage of the explosion that they had just barely escaped. Already he knew turbo lasers would be ineffective at this range, far slower than the truly light-based energy weapons that were being fired at them from so many thousands of miles away. "Sir, shouldn't we close with them? Get into effective weapons range?" "No need. They're coming to us. We need to survive."
Are you guys mad? Are you mad? You know what? You guys will just realize it yourselves. Just go close up to them. Go have a QCB, close quarter battle, and let's see how long you last. Just go try it. Just go try it.
Of their salvos until we can engage with our turbo lasers. Get me in contact with the ships around us. Let's link up into a fleet grouping. I've got the start of an idea. His orders carried out. Soon, the Trusted Victory and 8 other Venator Star Destroyers were flying in formation, having nearly reached the debris of the massive ship corpse. Checking the sensors on the holotable, Spikes could see the fragmented response of the Armada taking form. He was not receiving any orders or directive from the Jedi General in charge of the operation, so he assumed no one was. Half the surviving fleet was forming up around Renfi's flagship, the Honor Hound. A quarter were charging the enemy fleet, mostly made up of dedicated, non-clone crewed KDY ships. Even that quarter matched the actual number of the charging ships, but they looked like a cloud of fleas charging a pack of Rancors, and Spikes did not expect them to do much but slow them down. Then,
like really, the size difference, it's just overwhelming. The weapons are also overwhelming. The fact that the Warhammer 40K weapons have distance on their side, they can fire high-powered las gun, super las gun lasers at the Star Wars universe vessels, while the Star Wars universe vessels, they don't have anything of that, long-range attack that can attack the Warhammer 40K ships. So they're really at a disadvantage here, in terms of weapon firepower and in terms of, the size of the vessels. But let's see what Captain Spikes can do from this situation. He's gathering up Venators, and they're taking cover behind the wreckage of the Atlas of Steel. So let's see what they can do. I'm thinking that this is Chapter Master Javik and the Crimson Razors. I think it's them who are here and not Chapter Master Orion and the rest of the fleet. So yeah, this is still just a starter. It's a starter of what's coming. The main course is still coming.
and 2 more ships near him were struck. This time they weren't sitting ducks, however, and instead of burning through the shields and ships with persistent pillars of light, as had happened before, this time the beams strafed the surface of both ships, veering off their hulls after only a second or 2 of contact. The captain of the Ever-True, one of the struck ships, appeared on the holotable. "Captain Spikes," he said. "Captain Touchy, what's the situation on your ship?" "Well, shields are almost out, and it just got a lot hotter in here, but we seem to be doing all right. Having our sides to them helped reduce the area of contact, but I'm not using that port hangar exit anytime soon. I think they're using some kind of composite laser weapon to attack us from this range. "Captain, the Republic's glory is drifting out of formation," called a trooper. Before Spikes could even ask for it, an image of the stricken Venator was displayed for him. Still mostly intact, save for the two bridges located at the top of the ship, both smoldering with molten metal. Already escape pods and fighter craft were launching from it, while its engines, mindless and rudderless, continued to burn at full thrust, gradually veering away from the group. Spikes thought it would surely collide with the debris they were aiming towards, but he was wrong. A second strafing pillar of red waved across it, and then a third firing between the formation, hitting nothing. But the one additional impact was all the Republic's glory could take, and its hull was sheared away, a quarter of the ship departing on its own momentum while the mostly intact remnant of the Star Destroyer spun wildly, its damaged engines twirling it through space before it terminated 48 seconds later with an explosion. Spikes considered retreating then, and decided that even if he did ultimately do so, he would not leave before drawing blood for the Republic. Soon, he and the 7 surviving Venators were...
Don't be a hero. Don't be a hero, Captain Spikes. Please, make a strategic withdrawal and retreat back to Rathana, assess the situation, and, repair your vessels, and then maybe, prepare a proper offensive operation against the enemy. But this, what you're doing here,
among the debris, and no more fire came towards them, for it seemed the enemy knew that their light-based weapons would be rendered vastly weaker if they fired them through the particles and lumps of the debris field. Yet clearly they were not forgotten, for it was easy to see that an entire squadron of the smaller, yet still large craft had peeled away from the main charging force to address them. As they waited, Spikes set about arranging the ships, watching the enemy approach, and finally biding his time. As he did, he redirected his attention briefly to the battle being waged by the KDY assault and the encroaching battle fleet. He blinked. They were gone. Almost all gone. The enemy ships had not slowed down, did not take firing positions or angles of attack in any conventional sense, as the KDY ships had. They merely plowed through them, never halting, never stopping, literally ramming their way through the enemy in suicidal charges that saw ships 2 kilometers long colliding with the smaller vessels of the KDY Starfleet.
Prepare ramming speed!
And yet, they were not suicidal charges. Even as the KDY vessels began their haphazard assault on the faster leading ships of the enemy armada, even as they rained turbo lasers and concussion missiles upon them, the ships did not stop, and they did not break, not one. Upon getting a cleaner image of the ships, he realized why. They had prows, giant armored prows. Most of their guns seemed paradoxically to be mounted as broadsides, as on an archaic ocean transport, with only the occasional long weapons battery or two slung under the prow or over the port or starboard shoulders of the ships. And as proton torpedoes in...
It's interesting that you would say it that way because, the Star Wars vessels also have broadside weapons. They also, have ship-to-ship close-quarter battles like they're in the ocean. Because I remember in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, during the Battle of Coruscant, the Separatist vessels and the clone Republic Venator-class vessels, they were also firing ship-to-ship, with their cannons, with their iron cannons and everything else. So yeah, it's quite similar. It's just that with the Warhammer 40K vessels, it's far more prominent with the weapons that are facing for broadside, kind of attack formations. So yeah.
Packed it onto those massive wedge-like heads. As they were beaten by turbo lasers and concussion missiles and ship hull alike, they dented, burned, sizzled, melted, and were still too thick to overcome. Those few KDY vessels who evaded the charging noses of the outsiders were torn to ribbons in the cascading broadsides they let loose as they passed.
Warhammer 40K is melee battle. In space, on the ground, in the air, you will always have this kind of melee battle. I'm telling you. You know, these guys just love this up and close personal fighting. I love it. I really love Warhammer 40K when it comes to melee battle. You know, they really put emphasis on this thing. It's like tradition, it's culture. You can't be part of the Warhammer universe without having a bayonet or a sword or a chainsword. You know, you just can't. You have to be having any type of weapon that's meant for close quarter battle, and of course that is now translated into their ships as well. You know, with the prow armor plating in the front that they use to, you know, ramming speed on any type of vessel in front of them. Yeah.
Guns were so large, massive. Where a Republic vessel of that size could carry 40 or more weapons batteries intended for ship-to-ship combat, some of these vessels had as little as 10, some perhaps less. And yet, to call the ships lightly armed would be more than an understatement. It would be a lie. The guns were larger than many of the KDY's whole starships, dwarfing freighters, light frigates, and all starfighters deployed against the ships which bore them. Watching the red pings of the enemy meet the blue pings of their own fleet, and then watching all the blue vanish like snuffed candles, was making him sick. "We can't just sit here, sir," one of the men, the helmsman, said. "They need our help. We could flank them from here. We could charge." And Spikes did not speak. He was
Charge and do what? Charge and do what? What are you gonna do?
too afraid of what his voice might come out as, but instead he shook his head, cutting the clone off. "Batter. You know we can't," he managed after a moment. "We will be cut to pieces by those broadsides. Besides, those larger ships are still hanging back, waiting for us to break cover so they can do to us what they did to the Republic's glory. There's a whole group of them coming for us anyway. We won't have to go to them. We need to stick to the plan." And even then, as Spikes watched the red pings headed in their direction grow closer and closer, he knew that even with his plan, there was no certainty. "Launch all starfighters," he ordered. Barely a minute after that order was given, the red pings had become visible ships.
Yeah, what is the answer to the Star Wars universe as fighter, starfighters? What kind of answer does the Warhammer 40K have for that? I know that they have surface to air vehicles or space vehicles that they use, like smaller personnel carrier kind of aircraft, right? That the Astartes use, but I don't know if they have anything like a starfighter. I don't think I've seen anything like that or heard of any types of starfighters that the Warhammer 40K universe have. I know that they have vessels, they have big ships, but I've never heard of anything that is small that just has a cockpit in it and that's it, and you have your weapons. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that in the Warhammer 40K universe.
They fired, had been firing, despite the debris in the way. Their laser weapons were proportionally weakened, something Spikes was relieved to discover as one of their beams strafed across the deck of his ship and over his second bridge. No damage to anything but the shields, and the shields were holding. He breathed. The laser was smaller. Clearly it was not these weapons batteries that had been destroying the other Venators. And since they were coming at them,
obviously, it came from the bigger battleships way behind. Those are the ones that are firing those very powerful lasgun lasers, not the smaller ones that are coming after you.
Head on, he and his men were not being pelted the same way the hapless KDY defenders had been. And then a solid slug moving nearly a quarter the speed of light flew 8 meters past his bridge. It had been larger than a tri-fighter, possibly larger than an arc fighter. "All power to shields! Give them everything for the next 20 seconds. Weapons power, internal lighting, engine strength, life support, everything but the tractor beams." He
Interesting, tractor beams. I think they're going to push the the piece of the Atlas of Steel forward, maybe, or to keep it like a shield for them. Yes, the Warhammer 40K universe do have projectile weapons as well. They have their super las gun kind of weapons, and they also have their bolter cannons that they'll use for close quarter combat, or to disable enemy vessels' shields. So yeah, definitely, the Warhammer 40K universe is prepared for this. So what is the Star Wars universe's answer to all of this firepower? Let's see. Hey.
Called, and not a moment too soon. A second massive shell struck them, this time blasting into the body of the Venator, bouncing off the recently strengthened particle shields in a blinding flash, spinning up and striking the bridge with another flash of light before bouncing away into space. Their fellow Venators did the same and survived the opening salvos that came.
I'm surprised it didn't explode, I'm surprised that the shell didn't explode as soon as it hit its contact, with some sort of either the shield or the hull of the enemy ship. I would have expected it to explode right there, but okay.
One after another. Then the outsider ships stopped firing, now clearly of one mind, ramming. "Steady," Spikes called. The ships were drawing closer, engines leaving trailing plumes of plasma fire in their wake. Those plumes suddenly doubled in intensity as the ship sped up even more. "Shut off all shields, redistribute power, stay steady, troopers!" he yelled, seeing his crew shuffle and tighten their grips on their controls. They did, and the familiar, safe hum of the shields died. It was no matter. As he had already seen, it was a false comfort when dealing with these extreme weapons. Their maneuvers would save them, or nothing would. "Now!" he yelled. At that moment, 56 heavy tractor beams, all of which had already been locked onto an enormous slice of the broken dreadnought, swung their emitters in unison. The piece of metal, easily large enough to cover them all, even while scattered, flew through the void on invisible tethers of energy, and stopped abruptly right in front of the charging ships. They attempted to veer, fiery engines sputtering and dying as they labored to slow their momentum. But it wouldn't be enough, not nearly enough, not when the next part of the plan kicked in. "Push! Full forward!" Spikes yelled, and the Venators did as ordered, their own sublight trails glowing brightly as their engines flared to full. The momentum of the outsider ships and the sudden countercharge from the massive slab of metal the Venators had put between them was too swift and unexpected a maneuver for the outsider pilots to compensate for, and, one and all, they slammed into the veritable wall of debris. The outsider vessels crumpled somewhat, windows blowing out across the lengths of all 12 ships, and small explosions and balls of fire bursting from the seams and strains.
Well done. Well done. Captain Spikes, well done. I did not expect this. I did not expect you to use the material from the Atlas of Steel, or should I say the pieces of the ship like this, This is good. I'm surprised. I'm humbled. Yeah, I really am humbled. Okay.
All but one were completely halted, with the single exception having been the only vessel to speed up instead of slow down. Terrifyingly, this ship punched clean through the wreckage, suffering similar damage across itself, and yet not dead or disabled. It plowed directly into the Freedom, a Venator to the right of Spike's own vessel, and he watched from close range as its massive prow nearly cleaved the Star Destroyer in half, annihilating it. By the many moons, one breached the wall! Ignore it for now. Starfighters, stick to the plan. Hit them with everything you've got. Aim for the rents and breaches. Go, go, go! At his command, the Arc-Wings, Y-Wings, and other attack craft they had launched prior came out of hiding from the debris clouds all around them. The wounded, halted outsider ships were trying to back out of the sudden predicament they had found themselves in. But they were sluggish, stunned, or unable to understand precisely how they were being stopped, as the Venators continued to drive the wall forward, keeping them taut against it. Without a fighter screen to fend them off, the pilots had little trouble finding their marks, using all of their heavy ordnances, launching every last proton torpedo, concussion missile, and area control mine they had. The effect was 11 crippled, dying ships, all falling apart in the void of space. Now there was just one left, but that may have been one too many. Crippled, burning, and firing all the while, the ship's head was still buried in the broken body of the Freedom, firing into the ships to either side with its broadsides. The tempered trooper was rent into pieces with the large shells that had been fired before, having no shields to defend itself with as it aided its fellow Star Destroyers in pushing. The Vermilion Senator activated its shields before the volleys of metal death reached it, but it only survived marginally longer than its sister, the shields taking 2 strikes before collapsing, leaving the ship defenseless as it was filled with more munitions. 5 Star Destroyers remained now, and only for a few more seconds at this rate. "Open fire! All venators, all turbo lasers, all weapons, fire, fire, fire!" Spikes yelled. His whole ship shook violently as one of the shells pierced its hull, ripping open the hangar to space. But it was too late to worry about damage. All that could be done now was to shoot and shoot and shoot until nothing remained, either of the enemy or of them. And it worked. The ship seemed to stall as, from all sides, the venators opened fire, covering it in sprays of blue and green turbo lasers as its space frame was pelted with missiles and torpedoes from every ship. Like a salt sculpture, suddenly blasted from all sides with fire hoses, the outsider vessel seemed to simply fall apart and disintegrate under the concentrated firepower. Despite this, not one ship halted or stopped its bombardment until the wedge-shaped head of the enemy had come fully off the rest of its body. The crews cheered, both his and those of the other venators. 8 on 12 and we still won, said the helmsman. That's the
Well done, well done, well done.
might of the Republic, yelled another. But the sensors operator was not cheering. Sir, we've received transmissions from the General. We're to retreat. Pull back immediately. Sure. As soon as we pull his saber out of this fire. How is the main battle doing? The sensor operator looked sick. The battle is over, sir. Spikes felt his feet go numb, but he didn't show it. Show me, he ordered, and the trooper obeyed. The holotable displayed a sight which made even his heart sink. He had thought he'd never be part of a battle as disastrous as those they had fought on Jabeam. Not ever again, not this late in the war. But when he saw the graveyard that was all that remained of the vaunted KDY defense fleet, when he saw those massive, ungodly ships prowling in the wake of that burning wreckage like enormous beasts, when he saw them orienting in their direction, Spikes knew he had just become a survivor to a battle that would live in history for as long as the Republic existed, and for all the wrong reasons. Spikes tapped the holotable and brought up holograms of all the remaining captains around him. We need to retreat immediately. We'll rendezvous at Rothana. The Republic needs to know what happened here. Right, we'll dock starships and follow. You should get going, Spikes. I've got room enough for your squadrons, said Captain Touchy. Spikes nodded, remembering the condition of his hangar deck. Don't take too long. It will only take them minutes to be here, Spikes said. The other clones saluted, and he...
Wait a minute, they're not jumping in unison? They're not leaving the system in unison? What about Jedi Master Ren 5? Where's his vessel? What's going on his side of things? I know he sent out a message to say people should retreat, but I'm not hearing, the narrator. I'm not hearing a fan with too much time saying that, okay, Jedi Master Ren 5 has left the battle. I need to hear that. If I don't hear that, then I know there's something going on. What's going on? Where is he? This is not good. This is really not good. I mean, yes, Captain Spikes has his little victory here. Okay, it's not a little victory. It is a massive victory. I mustn't downplay this. What he has done here is exceptional, really, truly. I did not expect that. I did not expect him to execute such a plan and to, literally think outside the box. Instead of attacking them in the traditional sense with your vessels, ship-to-ship battle, because you're going to lose that way. try something else, try something different, try something fresh, if I can say it like that. And he has, and it succeeded. But now the big boys are here, and you're not part of the big boys. You're not part of the big boys. Your vessel is simply not part of the big boys. So yes, it's time to retreat.
Saluted back. Spikes turned then and ordered his helmsman to take them into hyperspace. And it was done in short order. Less than an hour later, he found himself in orbit around Rothana and its massive shipyard rings. Several other survivors of the battle had beaten him here, presumably having fled from the main battle before being taken apart. There were 25 ships there, including his own. General Renfai's
25 out of an odd 1,000 vessels? Only 25? Only 25. Yes.
flagship, the Honor Hound, was not present. And the 4 other Venators and their crews and captains never made it to the rendezvous. In fact, they were never heard from again. Captain Spikes waited. He was called to Rothana to provide a report, but he waited. They had been right behind him. He had only gone before them because his hangar had been damaged. Jedi arrived at Rothana from the retreat at Anaxis. They wanted to see him, to hear about how he had defeated 12 of the enemy's ships. But Captain Spikes waited. He sat, legs over the edge of the crew pit stations. He gave no more orders. He had no more orders. But his men stayed with him, and they waited for their brothers who would never come. Eventually the Jedi came to him, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu, and Anakin Skywalker. They were saying things, but he couldn't hear them, couldn't see them. He felt a hard hand fall onto his shoulder, and he looked up, only then realizing the moisture that had gathered in his eyes. But even through that, he could make out the face of Anakin Skywalker. The same Anakin who had rescued him from his doomed position on Jabim. "Spikes," he said, and Spikes knew the general remembered him. "We're going to get them back for this," the Jedi told him, metal hand squeezing his shoulder. Somehow, that cold, metal hand conveyed something comforting to the clone. Not compassion, not kindness. The Jedi always had plenty of that. It conveyed understanding. It conveyed a promise. A cold, hard promise. "We will get them for this," the general reasserted. "But we need your help." Spikes nodded and wiped his eyes, transforming his grief, his failure, into rage and conviction. "Yes, General," he said simply, taking his leader's hand and lifting himself. "I'll do whatever it takes." Next time. "Well, clearly they are some kind of religious society, with this emperor of theirs at or near its head. Fascinating. Think for a moment. They came from beyond the edge of the galaxy. Their art is composed of human figures and human skulls. And if you had to describe that ship as something other than a ship, what words would you choose?" Dr. Orthan shrugged. Temple. They killed Orthan. They blew him up. They killed him. Her eyes grew wide, but not wide enough to encompass the monstrous form of the Angel of Death.
Okay, guys, that's it with Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K Episode 4, Brothers Lost, by a fan with too much time. Ooh, I've been humbled, you know? I've been proven wrong. The Star Wars universe, I should always remember this, that the Star Wars universe will be fighting for their lives. They will be fighting tooth and nail in this situation. They're not just going to roll over and accept defeat. They will be commanders out there who will think outside the box. There will be commanders out there who will be courageous till the bitter end. You know, they will be those who will find any means necessary to fight against the enemy, against the Warhammer 40k universe. The Warhammer 40k universe is not just going to have a field day, you know, just killing and destroying everything and just wiping out everything, easy peasy. No, it's not going to be that simple. Clearly, it's going to be a slugfest between these two factions. And yeah, I've been humbled. I underestimated the Star Wars universe. That was my mistake. I've been proven wrong here. And I think also the Warhammer 40k universe will also take lessons from this. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the chapter masters will take lessons from this and see how they're going to adapt their fleets to battling the Star Wars universe fleets. And like I've said before, I wonder how are they going to answer the question on fighting against starfighters, because I haven't seen any starfighters coming from the Warhammer 40k universe. I haven't seen anything of the sort that, you know, the Star Wars universe has. You know, they need to have an answer to that threat. If they don't have one, it might be a bit of a problem, a bit of an issue, because, you know, throughout history, if I, you know, count in human Earth history, like our history, right, battleships are good, right? But battleships can be sunk by fighter jets, or not fighter jets, but by fighter planes, you know, carrying torpedoes, carrying surface-to-air missiles or something like that. So, you know, it's not foolproof to have the biggest and baddest battleship on the field. You need also fighter jets. You need things that can maneuver quite fast and that can target vessels and irritate vessels, and I think the Star Wars universe have that. I don't know if the Warhammer 40k universe is going to develop something, because, you know, they have this thing about creating brand new technology. Well, mainly the Mechanicus people of Mars, they have an issue with, you know, creating new technology. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens in episode 5. It seems to me that the Jedi Master Renfai and his vessel and all the other vessels that did not make it to the rendezvous position, Rothana, the planet, those ships, they are stuck there fighting against the Warhammer 40k forces. And it seems like in the next episode, there is a boarding party aboard Jedi Master Renfai's Venator class vessel. So that means Space Marines are coming in this ship and they're going to, you know, they're going to be killing a lot of people. They're really going to be killing a lot of people. And yeah, I'm just really worried about Jedi Master Renfai and his apprentice. I don't want them to die, but it seems as if it's going to head that way. Because, yes, the lightsaber is good, but I have never seen a lightsaber deflect projectile weapons, you know? I've seen them deflecting blaster weapons, you know, iron blaster weapons. Yeah, it's a bit slow. You can actually see it coming out of the gun and going directly to its target. But a projectile weapon moving at the speed of sound, you know, or maybe even faster than that, I don't know. Like a bolter is a very dangerous gun, and the bolter bullets are even more dangerous. You know, they're like miniature grenades. So I don't know how are they going to repel something like this. I mean, sure, you can use the Force, right? But I just don't know. I honestly don't know. This was a nice battle. It was a nice battle. The Star Wars universe gave the Warhammer 40K universe a bloody nose. A little bit of a bloody nose, but I'm sorry. Losing over 1,000 vessels. Like only 23 of them came back. The rest... yeah, it's terrible. Guys, that's it for today. If you like the video, remember to give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. And I will see you next week, Thursday. Okay? Bye-bye.